Before we start our discussion, here are our quick view answers. Russia is the non-OPEC country listed here that is experiencing an economic decline. The ongoing economic turmoil in Russia is the result of low oil prices and lack of confidence in the economy, which has led to the collapse of the Russian ruble that began in the second half of 2014. A decline in confidence in the Russian economy has caused investors to sell off their assets and flee. Nigeria is an African country experiencing the worst economic performance in 2016, as low oil prices have exposed the nation's inability to use oil receipts for sustainable growth and development. For comments, adverts, and sponsorship, please see our information displayed on the screen. Nigeria's economic recession has surprised and humbled the nation. How do people, especially those outside the country, see the nation at this time? What immediate remedies are available to end the recession? We have with us Anita Campion, President of Connexus in the United States, to offer some thoughts on this issue. Anita Campion is a well-known development expert who has had practical experience in many African countries. She has recently brought her famous Cracking the Nut Agricultural Value Chain Conference to Rwanda and Ghana. Please join us in our discussion with Anita Campion. Okay, Anita, thank you very much for coming to see us and to visit us in our Magoni studios. And first of all, I want to thank you also for Monday at the presentation where you gave that lecture, brilliant lecture, wonderful as ever. But you've come to Nigeria at an interesting time when the country is in a recession. Nigerians have been humbled by this experience, looking for a way out. Now, you've done a lot of work across Africa, across the world for that matter. And you've been in Nigeria before. At least that I know, this is the second time that we've had to visit, having you in Nigeria. So the way you see Nigeria now in the midst of the recession and all of that, what do you think is the way out, for Nigeria at this time? And how can we be sure to stay on a sustainable path, with traction to not come back easily into recession anytime soon again?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Kpakol. It's a pleasure to be here and to be working with you again. It's been almost 10 years since I was last here. And what I heard at the forum on Monday was people kind of feeling like the government has let them down. And from my perspective, understanding and seeing the depreciation of the Naira against the U.S. dollar, which has been extreme lately, and in the recession that you're going through, the truth is it's tempting, especially young people. They want quick fixes, and unfortunately, I don't see any really great quick fixes for Nigeria. But I almost think you have to reset the starting bar with where we are now, and then focus on growth from there. But there are some things. I mean, one of the things. Well, the first thing I want to say is I would hate to see Nigeria throw out the things that they've been working on that are going in the right direction. So one of the things I saw and really learned when I was here 10 years ago was that the government was really committed to combating corruption. And I know that effort has continued, and it's not easy, and it takes a long time. But I think that, one of the things that isn't happening as much as I would like is for that message to get out that Nigeria is really working on that.
To get out of Nigeria.
To get out of Nigeria. Yes. And, I think one of your best opportunities is really to reach out to the Nigerian diaspora who actually would be interested in investing in Nigeria, especially given that, the Naira is cheap right now, so it's a good time to invest.
Absolutely.
So engage them, and then possibly even create a campaign where they help to communicate to others where they live in the U.S. and Europe that Nigeria is actually a good environment for investing right now, and that it's a good time to get in.
Yes.
At the same time, I know the current president has focused on diversifying the economy, and that makes a lot of sense because the dependence on oil kind of made it so that people had been a little bit spoiled from the revenues that came from that, and with commodity prices being low, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, that's an adjustment that's not going to be easy. So, I think the one thing to really think about there is to make sure that, you're not expecting too much too quickly. It's only been 18 months, and the truth is that these things take time. But I also think you're thinking in the right direction. And again, as we talked about 10 years ago, was the way that we could work on things is by engaging, state-level governments and encouraging public-private partnerships and really finding ways that the states can use their minimal resources to leverage additional resources from private sector and then finance, and from everything from building the infrastructure, the roads that are necessary, to focusing on what's it going to take to get a company to invest in this country. And for example, we had our annual Cracking the Nut conference in Rwanda a few years back, and we had the Minister of Agriculture there, and we had your company, Connexus, yes.
Okay, yes.
So, and we also had a number of private sector investors
from the U.S.
No, from Africa.
From Africa, okay.
From the region, and one person that we brought was a very senior person from VegPro, which is one of the largest horticultural exporters to Europe out of Africa. And the Minister of Agriculture was very excited because she said, "We've been trying to get, their attention, for years, and now you've brought them to this conference. So, I want to sit down and talk to them." And so they had a chance to actually sit down and hear why VegPro wouldn't invest in Rwanda yet, because there were certain structural issues that needed to be addressed. So, and a lot of it had to do with, getting goods out of the country and, at the customs level and all of that. And so that's the kind of feedback that governments need to be inviting in and hearing so that they can make the adjustments that are going to make the difference in attracting the private sector investment. But the first round of discussions is going to be probably focused on, what the problems are that need to be fixed. And so then we have to find creative solutions. So, state governments could say, we're willing to, offer, say, our extension service providers to help organize, for example, smallholder farmers, so that you have the production not only at the time you meet, but it's the time you need it, but at the quality specifications and the volume that you need. Then they might say, okay, then I'd be willing to commit to buying a certain amount if you can meet those quality expectations. And the truth is, they're going to start with.
But where do you get those people from? These guys that say we want to buy a certain amount, are they from outside Africa, or this? And how do you get them? They're from within Nigeria.
Right. It could be both, and I think it should. The discussion should include both. But so again, I'm focused on the state level partly because we're thinking about that right now. But for sure, there should be more open dialogue between the private sector and the public sector about the use of the resources. Again, I think the more there's transparency out there of the resources. And
that was a kind of dialogue that we were trying to have on Monday to get stakeholders, from every sector to come to a forum like that to have a discussion.
Exactly, and I then was interviewing some public financial management specialists here in the country, and they were saying, in some of these states, they don't even have the systems in place to be able to show how money is being spent. So that's the starting point. And the more that we can actually not only show that, but have it be transparently shared with the public, the more we can make sure that the public spending kind of our money, tax money, in the way that we believe they should. And so,
that helps to build confidence.
It builds confidence, and plus, I think the reality right now is it's actually in the state's interest because the resources are not as much as they used to be, and so part of the trick is how are we going to manage on a lower budget? And so that kind of discussion would help people to get realistic.
Absolutely. Let's go back a little bit to the issue with the diaspora, because I think that's really critical. You and I talked just before we came on the set about that. And I think because even now, according to World Bank data, Nigerians in the diaspora send home close to $21 billion every year. And that's about 70% of this year's annual federal budget.
Wow.
That's about 70% of the federal government's budget. So if at a time like this, if we were talking and said, okay, suppose guys that are near retirement, Nigerians that are outside, this might be a very good time for them to want to come home with the exchange rate the way it is. So that is that right? What I'm saying, that this, if we provide incentives for them to say, okay, those that want to build whatever at home or bring companies home or look for a way to retire and get back home, this is really a good time. But what can the government do to as an incentive to cause people to connect with that?
I've actually seen billboards from financial institutions promoting, the expatriate investment accounts, so for the diaspora to be able to invest. And I've seen it in the Philippines where they were encouraging investments in kind of retirement properties. And that was really facilitating a large amount of resources to go into construction investments. One of the big limitations here in Nigeria is the Land Use Act that makes it very hard for people to be able to use the land for collateral to get a loan. And so, one of the things you and I have talked about is the idea of possibly looking at privatizing at least some of the land and possibly making a commitment to privatize over a longer period of time would actually trigger a strong interest in investing in Nigeria and a sense that, things are changing. It's going to be different than it's been in the past. And then there could be all kinds of, retirement communities even developed to encourage those people who have been living and working overseas to come back and to retire here and to spend the rest of their money here.
Yes, absolutely. Now, especially at a time like this, what role would agriculture have? And agriculture processing. I read something that I think it came out in your remarks on Monday also about how Nigeria could go more into processing, adding more value to and not focusing that much on the raw crops production. Am I saying that right?
No, I think, first of all, agriculture is extremely important to Nigeria and all of Africa. The big advantage that Africa has is that there's a lot of arable land that is still not used, not cultivated, so there's potential to expand. But I think that one of the things that I also talked about is, as I've talked to people, there's the main crops keep getting, mentioned again: rice, sorghum, millet, maize, and those are really kind of what we consider staple crops, and those are important. They're especially important for food security.
On that note, I want to thank you so very much, Anita. You are wonderful.
Thank you.